This podcast has been produced in partnership between Diverse Learners and the Workforce Disability Equality Standard team to explore the lived experiences of disabled staff working in the NHS. Hello everybody, it's Kerry Pace with another podcast in our series A Conversation With, where we talk to staff in the NHS who have disabilities and they share their lived stories. This is a partnership project between Diverse Learners, who I set up, and I'm called Kerry Pace, and we also in partnership with the Workforce Disability Equality Standard, WEDS. I hope everybody is well. As usual, I'll do my disclaimer that we are working from home at the moment. It is COVID, so you may hear background noise. You might hear a doorbell or a dog or a child coming in, who knows. But I hope you will be forgiving and understand the situations people are working in at the moment. So without further ado, I'm going to start a conversation with Gilly today. Hi, Gilly. Could you tell us who you are, what your job in the NHS is, and how you would describe your disability?
Hi, Kerry. My name's Gilly. I am a neighbourhood lead and I work for Manchester Local Care Organisation. And I'm also a nurse, a Queen's nurse. And I also am one of the regional leads for the Chief Nursing Officer BME Advisory Group. And my role is very much about health and social care integration. And I believe I have a big role in curating that. And I really love my job. For me, I wouldn't describe myself as having a disability. Probably it might have been said before, but if I had to describe something, it would be a superpower. If I were to describe it, and I have dyspraxia and dyslexia, and I guess the superpower that I have is I'm a hugely divergent thinker, and it's a quality that I've grown to love about myself.
And I expect very useful in your role to have that divergent thinking, that solution-based approach, creative. These are all common strengths, or under the title that some people call superpower. So definitely, I think that that would be a superpower in that context.
Yeah.
So what is your experience, Gilly, of working in the NHS?
So I've worked in health and social care for over 30 years. And it's it's been a real journey around inclusive cultures overall. And, you know, it probably, when I first started, many people wouldn't even know what dyspraxia and dyslexia were anyway. And so, you know, that's where we've come from. And I guess it's only in the latter years that I have shared my dyspraxia and dyslexia, and probably in the latter years where I've purposely shared my dyspraxia and dyslexia, because I believe that my role is to promote inclusive cultures. So I role model that actually it's something that is about me, and, you know, hopefully other people can feel comfortable. My experience has been, for some people, I remember working with a student nurse only a few years ago who had dyslexia, and we'd done a case study, a reflection, but she wanted it to maintain anonymity because it detailed her dyslexia. She shared it with me, but we'd come across something that was an asset. It was an asset approach with her, but she didn't want to share it. She wanted it to be anonymous. So I am aware that there's many people who don't want to disclose. A colleague of mine talked about a child that equally didn't felt it was a hindrance, felt embarrassed to disclose. And so my experience is in the NHS has been, it's pretty much on par with a lot of places where it's been a bit of a journey to get to the point that you disclose, and actually now in a position where it might even be seen as an asset. So yes, and I think given the right circumstances and the right support, which I can say that we've had some tough times going through change and integration in the NHS and, you know, our systems, across the systems. But I do believe that we're at a point where the assets around that diversity of thought are starting to become really obvious, and as a team member, bringing a difference in thinking can be a real asset to harness, and that's the bit that I'm celebrating now, thankfully. So I think, you know, it's early days, you know, we're not yet there yet, but certainly in the NHS I've seen us come a long journey with people, and usually with people with lived experience or organisations that are working with and on behalf of those lived experts. And, you know, I'm going to say you've made the difference, because actually it needs the whole neighbourhood, the whole community to work to change where we live and how we live.
Thanks, Gilly. I really appreciate that. And I think you are definitely blowing the trumpet and trying to promote the positives as well, to try and address some of the attitudes that you've already highlighted. And actually, your journey of now telling more people about your disability, or your superpower, as you like to call it, and it's very important to use a language the person themselves uses to describe themselves. And that's one of our top tips in this set of podcasts. And you mentioned disclosure. Now, that's an interesting terminology, because often that disclosure is how things are measured, how many people are in the NHS who have a disability. I use my language, and my language is declare my disability. And I like the idea of declaring, because disclosure sounds a bit secretive. It sounds a little bit something to be shameful, or something you're sort of hiding away. So I prefer the term declare disability, but I understand that there is still a lot of language out there and paperwork out there that requires that word disclosure. And actually a lot of people understand that word disclosure more than they might understand a superpower or a declaration. What are your views on those sort of experiences that you've had?
So declaration, as you say, or whatever you want to call it, disclosure declaration, really is literally a tick box for some people. And yeah, I mean, for me, I'm a strong advocate for it in the role that I do, which is around being data-led. And it's interesting that for me, data comes in many forms. Data comes in the kind of hard numbers, descriptions of data, coding, if you like. And then there's this other data, which is our lived experience, the grassroots intelligence, which you know, that we've referenced and you alluded to before about it's what you call disability yourself, or ability. Because for me, disability it's not a reference point. That doesn't make sense to me. So
yes, in the tick boxes, that's what it's labelled as, for example. Yeah, and there's sometimes that bridge can be difficult, can't it?
Yeah. So I certainly wouldn't describe myself in that way. So, but what is really helpful is a tick box in the sense of let's shape our services for people who live in our neighbourhoods to meet the needs. So it's really important that we have that. And then also we want staff who represent our people to work in our services. So we need to understand the needs of our staff as well, and how our staff represent our people. And it's never been so important as it is now. It's hugely important, the data. So yeah, tick box in one sense, but actually a really important tick box. And
it might be a gateway to more things.
Yeah, and I'm sure we will talk about when we're not to tick box. So
yeah, absolutely. And as you said, you've already demonstrated in a previous comment, you were saying that some people knew. So for the person that you had with the student, you knew, but the rest of the team doesn't know. And that isn't that can be enabled as well. You don't have to tell or declare to everybody about your particular needs. You can declare to specific people.
Yes.
And that's a route as well.
Yeah.
So that kind of leads us nicely onto initiatives like access to work,
yes,
or
yeah,
the Workforce Disability Equality Standard, which is WEDES, and I know that's actually part of your day job as well, so we might have a slightly different perspective here. So if you could share your experiences of those, or maybe how they help put reasonable adjustments in place to make sure you're not disadvantaged, or in your particular position others disadvantaged, that would be great if you could tell us about access to work or WEDES in your experience.
So access to work, as far as, there is a couple of things actually. My experience is it's been I would describe it as like this kind of journey, a bit up and down really. And I think, at the end of the day, access to work it's a group of processes. It's all about how we do things, isn't it? So access to work for me has had some challenges, and yet when I get the things that I need, it's been fantastic. So yeah, I think it's a situation of two sides really. But one of the things that has come out of it through my own experiences of access to work, and some of the frustrations really, and hearing experience of colleagues, a good thing that's come out of it is a workshop and some workshops that we've done, and where people are describing their experience, some of it really good examples and some where we could do things better. And so it's actually given a platform to improve experiences for staff. And we know that staff experience correlates with experience of people who use our services. So we know that quality is dependent upon that. So I see this being absolutely a crucial piece of work that I'm doing as a neighbourhood lead, but I can't do it without our staff and our people, and actually taking that to the degree and doing it together. And there's been some really interesting learning come from that, so that's really good. As far as WEDES goes, I think it's variable in whether people know the standard or the abbreviation. And I know that because I've done a lot of work around the RES, Workforce Race Equality Standard. And when I first started talking about that, people didn't know what I was talking about. However, when you talked about what it meant and some of the standards, of course, people had some knowledge of it, but they just didn't know the framework. So, again, it's a tool, it's a framework. The bit that I think is really important is how we then can have different conversations around this, because a standard, the minimum standard is we need, there's always a minimum we must achieve, and we need to kind of try and take that forward at every step. But what we do know is that when we try and tick box things, people know. And from the workshops the workshop that we've done, it came out very loud and very clear that it was the personal interaction of how things were being dealt with or enabled that was absolutely imperative. So it might be access to work, but it's actually the conversation that you have with your line manager, or how important your line manager might take it is the biggest thing really. So I think sometimes these things are really useful to take this as forward as a system, along with the people and the different conversations that we need to have around it. So I kind of understand WEDES, and I understand access to work, and that is a starting point for me. It's the engagement and the different conversations we have with people
Excellent. And this is where reasonable adjustments come in as well, because Access to Work and WEDES are trying to promote reasonable adjustments, or in the process of Access to Work, fund reasonable adjustments. So that kind of brings us back to what advice you might offer from your experiences, insight, for people who have disabilities or managers in this NHS for removing those barriers, putting in reasonable adjustments and moving towards our favourite word, inclusiveness.
So I think, it's famously a journey, isn't it? So, having conversations, some people, might not even realise. Well, I know of people who haven't realised that it's not just equipment. It might be time, or it might be information, or lots of different things. But, fundamental to all of this is how we deal with people and understanding each other. I work in health and social care. This is our business, if you want to call it that. So we should be at the forefront of, enabling inclusiveness in this way. And certainly for me, it's about that personal attention to that and how we remove the barriers. So my advice would be, it would be to have conversations, to start the conversations, because sometimes we just don't know. And, there's so many things that I have learned along the way of things. So I did a walkabout on a vaccination site recently, and we invited the learning disabilities team with a lived expert. We've invited someone from Henshaws who, visually impaired, someone for age-friendly, Withenshaw, and we've invited those people, and we got our mental health lead with lived expertise to come walk around our site and tell us what worked well, what didn't work well. And that's all adjustments. It's adjustments for people we serve and staff that we serve, because actually we are people who live in those very neighbourhoods. So I would say, probably think wider, draw upon lived expertise to lead those conversations with you, and start from there. And then, of course, just because who I am, and I did mention Workforce Race Equality Standard, I'm really interested in the intersections of and intersectionality. So multiple, some people see it as multiple disadvantages. It could be multiple advantages depending on what frame you use or superpower you use.
Absolutely, or multiple identities.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I think that there is, what's our ambition, Kerry? Our ambition is to have a fantastically inclusive health and social care system and neighbourhoods that we live in, that we all thrive in. And my work continues until we're there, really. So this is part of that. And I thank, Diverse Learners for being part of that, because, you've supported me in what I'm doing currently. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Gilly. And I think that's a really nice place to kind of wind up this conversation. We could carry on, and I know we could, and we often do, but I hope everybody's kind of got a really good insight into somebody who has, again, another person. So we also had a podcast with Ian, and Ian also had multiple hats on, his day job and his lived experience as well. So if you've really enjoyed the perspectives of Gilly, have a listen to Ian, because he works in HR and has a great kind of experience as well of that lived experience. The knowledge is out there. Ask. Absolutely, Gilly. I love your example of getting service users in, looking around the site and working out what you might not see, what somebody else may see, removing those barriers. And that would be a great way of including people in multiple different ways. So I'm super excited by that example, and I hope people take that to heart, include it in their WEDES action plans, and that would be amazing. So everybody keep safe. We're in difficult times. We're March 2021. We could be near the end of these restrictions. So everybody keep safe and take care. And thanks for all your work during the pandemic Gilly, and for also the vaccination centre work. It's unbelievable of you to do that, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Kerry.
Take care, everybody.